Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 21 of our reading of Alfred Hitchcock Presents Stories Not for the Nervous. Now, we're going to go over the copyright information, which will be on your screen right now. And it clearly says here, the author would like to acknowledge the invaluable assistance of Robert Arthur in the preparation of this volume. It was published by Dell, and it gives the address, copyright 1965 by Random House. And Dell, all rights reserved under international and Pan-American copyright conventions, and we have all that. So, this and it has the copyright information and all that stuff, all the different printings and all that stuff. Now, anyways, we also have, sorry about that. We also have the acknowledgements, and I haven't read those aloud yet. And if we have time after this one, I might, but they'll be on the screen right now for you to read while I read this. We've been reading Don't Look Behind You by Frederic Brown, and we'll be continuing that. Harley was murdered, and they've been questioning Justin Dean to see if they can find the prints and the plates, rather, because they were running a mint. But now, let's see what happens. They located the Amsterdam shop, but they didn't find any evidence there, and they really had no evidence to hold Justin on at all. But he didn't know that, and it never occurred to him to get a lawyer. He kept wanting to see Harley, and they wouldn't let him. Then, when they learned he really didn't believe Harley could be dead, they made him look at the dead man they said was Harley. And he guessed it was, though Harley looked different dead. He didn't look magnificent dead. And Justin believed then, but still didn't believe, after all, that he just went silent and wouldn't say a word, even when they kept him awake for days and days with a bright light in his eyes and kept slapping him to keep him awake. They didn't use clubs or rubber hoses, but they slapped him a million times and wouldn't let him sleep. And after a while, he lost track of things and couldn't have answered their questions even if he'd wanted to. For a while after that, he was in a bed in a white room, and all he remembers about that are nightmares he had, and calling for Harley, and an awful confusion as to whether Harley was dead or not. And then things came back to him gradually, and he knew he didn't want to stay in the white room. He wanted to get out so he could hunt for Harley, and if Harley was dead, he wanted to kill whoever had killed Harley, because Harley would have done the same for him. So he began pretending to act. He began pretending and acting very cleverly, the way the doctors and nurses seemed to want him to act, and after a while they gave him his clothes and let him go. He was becoming cleverer now, he thought. What would Harley tell me to do? And he knew they'd try to follow him because they'd think he might lead them to the plates, which they didn't know were at the bottom of the bay. And he gave them the slip before he left Albany, and he went first to Boston, and from there by boat to New York, instead of going direct. He went first to the print shop and went into the back way after watching the alley for a long time to be sure the place wasn't guarded. It was a mess. They must have searched it very thoroughly for the plates. Harley wasn't there, of course. Justin left the room, and from a phone booth in a drugstore, he telephoned their hotel and asked for Harley, and was told that he no longer lived there. And to be clever and not let them guess who he was, he asked for Justin Dean, and they said Justin Dean didn't live here anymore either. Then he moved to a different drugstore, and from there he decided to call up some friends of Harley's, and he phoned Bull Mallon first, and because Bull was a friend, he told him who he was and asked if he knew where Harley was. Bull Mallon didn't pay any attention to that. He sounded excited a little, and he asked, "Did the cops get the plates, Dean?" And Justin said they didn't, that he wouldn't tell them, and he asked again about Harley. Bull asked, Are you nuts or kidding?" And Justin just asked him again, and Bull's voice changed, and he said, "Where are you?" And Justin told him. Bull said, Harley's here. He's staying under cover, but it's all right if you know, Dean. You wait right there at the drugstore, and we'll come and get you." They came and got Justin, but Bull Malin and two other men in a car, and they told him Harley was hiding out way deep in New Jersey, and that they were going to drive there now. So he went along and sat in the back seat between two men he didn't know, while Bull Malin drove. It was late afternoon then when they picked him up, and Bull drove all evening and most of the night, and he drove fast, so he must have gone further than New Jersey, at least into Virginia, or maybe further into the Carolinas. The sky was getting faintly gray with first dawn when they stopped at a rustic cabin that looked like it had been used as a hunting lodge. It was miles from anywhere. There wasn't even a road leading to it, just a trail that was level enough for the car to be able to make it. They took Justin into the cabin and tied him to a chair, and they told him Harley wasn't there, but Harley had told them that Justin would tell them where the plates were, and he couldn't leave until he did tell. Justin didn't believe them. He knew then that they'd tricked him about Harley, but it didn't matter as far as the plates were concerned. It didn't matter if he told them what he'd done with the plates, because they couldn't get them again, and they wouldn't tell the police. So he told them quite willingly, but they didn't believe him. They said he'd hidden the plates and was lying, and tortured him to make him tell. They beat him, and they cut him with knives, and they held burning matches and lighted cigars to the soles of his feet, and they pushed needles under his fingernails. Then they'd rest and ask him questions, and if he could talk, he'd tell them the truth, and after a while they'd start to torture him again. It went on for days and weeks. Justin doesn't know how long, but it was a long time. Once they went away for several days and left him tied up with nothing to eat or drink. They came back and started it all over again, and all the time he hoped Harley would come to help him, but Harley didn't come, not then. After a while, what was happening in the cabin ended, or anyways, he didn't know any more about it. They must have thought he was dead. Maybe they were right, or anyways, not far from wrong. The next thing he knew was the swamp. He was lying in shallow water at the edge of deep water. His face was out of the water. It woke him when he turned a little, and his face went under. They must have thought him dead and thrown him into the water, but he had floated into the shallow part before he had drowned, and the last flicker of consciousness had turned him over on his back with his face out. I don't remember much about Justin in the swamp. It was a long time, but I just remember flashes of it. I couldn't move at first. I just lay there in the shallow water with my face out. It got dark and it got cold, I remember, and finally my arms would move a little, and I got farther out of the water, lying in the mud with only my feet in the water. I slept or was unconscious again, and when I woke up, it was getting gray dawn, and that was when Harley came. I think I'd been calling him, and he must have heard. He stood there dressed as immaculately and perfect as ever, right in the swamp, and he was laughing at me for being so weak and lying there like a log, half in the dirty water and half in the mud, and I got up and nothing hurt anymore. We shook hands, and he said, "Come on, Justin, let's get you out of here." And I was so glad he'd come that I cried a little. He laughed at me for that and said I should lean on him and he'd help me walk. But I wouldn't do that because I was coated with mud and filth of the swamp, and he was so clean and perfect in a white linen suit like an ad in a magazine, and all the way out of that swamp, all the days and nights we spent there, he never ever got mud on his trouser cuffs, nor his hair mussed. I told him just to lead the way, and he did, walking just ahead of me, sometimes turning around laughing and talking to me and cheering me up. Sometimes I'd fall, but I wouldn't let him come back and help me. But he'd wait patiently until I could get up. Sometimes I'd crawl instead when I couldn't stand up anymore. Sometimes I'd have to swim streams, and he'd leap lightly across. And it was day and night and day and night, and sometimes I'd sleep and things would crawl across me, and some of them I caught and ate, or maybe I dreamed that. I remember other things in that swamp, like an organ that played a lot of the time, and sometimes angels in the air and devils in the water, but those were delirium, I guess. Harley would say, a little farther, Justin. We'll make it, and we'll get back at them all of them. And we made it. We came to a dry field. Cultivated fields were with waist-high corn, but there wasn't ears on the corn for me to eat. And when there was a stream, a clear stream that wasn't stinking water like the swamp, and Harley told me to wash myself and my clothes, and I did, although I wanted to hurry on to where I could get food. I still looked pretty bad. My clothes were clean of mud and filth, but they were mere rags and wet because I couldn't wait for them to dry, and I had a ragged beard and was barefoot. But we went on and came to a little farm building, just a 2-room shack, and there was a smell of fresh bread just out of the oven, and I ran the last few yards to knock on the door. A woman, an ugly woman, opened the door, and when she saw me, she slammed it again before I could say a word. Strength came to me from somewhere, maybe from Harley, although I can't remember him being there just then. There was a pile of kindling logs beside the door. I picked one of them up as though it were no heavier than a broomstick, and I broke down the door and killed the woman. She screamed a lot, but I killed her. Then I ate the hot, fresh bread. I watched from the window as I ate and saw a man running across the field towards the house. I found a knife and I killed him as he came in at the door. It was much better killing with the knife. I liked it that way. I ate more bread and kept watching from all the windows, but no one else came. Then my stomach hurt from the hot bread I'd eaten, and I had to lie down, doubled up, and then the hurting quit. I slept. When the hurting quit, I slept. Harley woke me up, and it was dark. He said, let's go. Let's get going. You should be far away from here before it's daylight. I knew he was right, but I didn't hurry away. I was becoming, as you see, very clever now. I knew there were things to do first. I found matches and a lamp and lighted the lamp and I hunted through the shack for everything I could use. I found clothes of the man, and they fit me, not too badly, except that I had to turn up the cuffs of the trousers and the shirt. His shoes were big, but that was good because my feet were so swollen. I found a razor and shaved. It took a long time because my hand wasn't steady, but I was careful and didn't cut myself much. I had to hunt hardest for their money, but I found it finally. It was $60. And I took the knife after I had sharpened it. It isn't fancy, just a bone-handled carving knife, but it's good steel. I'll show it to you pretty soon now. It's had a lot of use. Then we left, and it was Harley who told me to stay away from the roads and find railroad tracks. That was easy because we heard a train whistle far off in the night and knew which direction the tracks lay. From then on, with Harley helping, it had been easy. You you won't need the details from here, I mean, about the brakeman and about the tramp we found asleep in the empty reefer and about the about the near things I had with the police of the near thing I had with the police in Richmond. I learned from that. I learned I mustn't talk to Harley when anybody else was around to hear. He hides himself from them. He's got a trick, and they don't know he's there, and they think I'm funny in the head if I talk to him. But in Richmond, I bought better clothes and got a haircut, and a man I killed in an alley had $40 on him, so I had money again. I've done a lot of traveling since then. If you stop to think, you'll know where I am right now. I'm looking for Bull Malin and his two men who helped him. Their names are Harry and Carl. I'm going to kill them when I find them. Harley keeps telling me that those fellows are big time and that I'm not ready for them yet, but I can be looking while I'm getting ready, so I keep moving around. Sometimes I stay in one place long enough to hold a job as a printer for a while. I've learned a lot of things. I can hold a job and people don't think I'm too strange. They don't get scared when I look at them like they sometimes do, like they sometimes did a few months ago, and I've learned not to talk to Harley except in our own room, and then only very quietly so people in the next room won't think I'm talking to myself. And I've kept in practice with the knife. I've killed lots of people with it, mostly on the streets at night, sometimes because they look like they might have money on them, but mostly just for practice and because I've come to like doing it. I'm really good with the knife by now. You'll hardly feel it, but Harley tells me that kind of killing is easy and that it's something else to kill a person who's on guard, as Bull and Harry and Carl will be. And that's the conversation that led to the bet I mentioned. I told Harley that I'd bet him that right now I could warn a man I was going to use the knife on him and even tell him why and approximately when, and that I could still kill him. And he bet me that I couldn't, and he's going to lose that bet. He's going to lose it because I'm warning you right now, and you're not going to believe me. I'm betting that you're going to believe that this is just another story in a book, that you won't believe that this is the only copy of this book that contains this story, and that this story is true. Even when I tell you how it was done, I don't think you'll really believe me. You see, I'm putting it over on Harley, putting it over on Harley, winning the bet by putting it over on you. He never thought, and you won't realize how easy it is for a good printer, who's been a counterfeiter too, to counterfeit one story in a book. Nothing like as hard as counterfeiting a $5 bill. I had to pick a book of short stories, and I picked this one because I happened to notice that the last story in the book was titled Don't Look Behind You, and that was going to be a good title for this. You'll see what I mean in a few minutes. I'm lucky that the printing shop I'm working for now does book work, and had a typeface that matched the rest of the book. I had a little trouble matching the paper exactly, but I finally did, and I've got it ready while I'm writing this. I'm writing this directly on a linotype late at night in the shop where I'm working days. I even have the boss's permission. Told him I was going to set up and print a story that a friend of mine had written as a surprise for him, and that I'd melt the type metal back as soon as I'd published one good copy. When I finished writing this, I'll make up the type in pages to match the rest of the book, and I'll print it print it on the matching paper I have ready. I'll cut the new pages to fit and bind them in. You won't be able to tell the difference, even if a faint suspicion may cause you to look at it. Don't forget I made $5 and $10 bills you couldn't have told from the original. And this is kindergarten stuff compared to that job. And I've done enough bookbinding that I'll be able to take the last story out of the book and bind this one in instead of it. And you won't be able to tell the difference. No matter how closely you look, I'm going to do a perfect job of it, and if it takes me all night. And tomorrow I'll go to some bookstore or maybe a newsstand or even a drugstore and sell books and has other copies of this book, ordinary copies, and I'll plant this one there. I'll find myself a good place to watch from, and I'll be watching when you buy it. The rest I can't tell you because it depends a lot on circumstances, whether you were right home with the book or what you did. I won't know till I follow you and keep watch till you read it, and I see that you're reading the last story in the book. If you're home while you're reading this, maybe I'm in the house with you right now. Maybe I'm in the very room hidden waiting for you to finish the story. Maybe I'm watching through the window, or maybe I'm sitting near you on the streetcar or train. If you're reading it there, maybe I'm on the fire escape outside your hotel room. But wherever you're reading it, I'm near you, watching and waiting for you to finish. You can count on that. You're pretty near the end now. You'll have finished in seconds, and you'll close the book, still not believing. Or if you haven't read the stories in order, maybe you'll turn back to start another story. If you do, you'll never finish it. But don't look around, you'll be happier. If you don't know it, if you don't see the knife coming when I kill people from behind, they don't seem to mind much. Go on, just a few seconds or minutes, thinking this is just another story. Don't look behind you. Don't believe this until you feel the knife. Wow, that was a good one. Okay, we have time for the acknowledgements real quick, and we might as well go over those real quick. I think we've got time. Acknowledgements. To the Future by Ray Bradbury, copyright 1950 by Ray Bradbury, reprinted by permission of the Harold Matson Company, Incorporated. River of Riches by Gerald Kresh, reprinted by permission of Collins Knowlton Wing, Incorporated, copyright 1958 by the Curtis Publishing Company. Levitation by Joseph Payne Brennan, copyright 1958 by Joseph Payne Brennan, reprinted by permission of Arkham House and the Scott Meredith Literary Agency, Incorporated. Miss Winter and the Wind by Christine Noble Govan, reprinted by permission of the author, copyright 1946 by Creative Age Press, Incorporated. The Man with the Copper Fingers by Dorothy L. Sayers, reprinted from Lord Peter Views the Body by permission of A. Watkins, Incorporated, copyright 1928 by Anthony Fleming, renewed, and copyright 1956 by Anthony Fleming. 20 Friends of William Shaw by Raymond E. Banks, reprinted by permission of the author and Mike Shane Mystery Magazine, and copyright 1960 by Raymond E. Banks. The Other Hangman by Carter Dixon from the Department of Queer Complaints by Carter Dixon, copyright 1940 by William Morrow and Company, Incorporated, reprinted by permission of William Morrow and Company, Incorporated. Don't Look Behind You by Frederic Brown, copyright 1947, 1953 by Frederic Brown, reprinted by permission of the author and the author's agent, the Scott Meredith Literary Agency, Incorporated, originally appearing in Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine. No Bath for the Browns by Margot Brennan, reprinted by permission of David Hyham Associates, Limited, London. Copyright 1944 by Margot Brennan. The Uninvited by Michael Gilbert, reprinted by permission of the author. Copyright 1960 by Popular Publications Incorporated. Dune Roller by Julian May, reprinted by permission of the Condé Nast Publication Incorporated, originally appearing in Astounding Science Fiction, now Analog Science Fiction, Science Fact. Copyright 1951 by Julian May Dickey. The Dog Died First by Bruno Fisher, reprinted by permission of the author and his agent, August Linegar. Copyright 1946 by Bruno Fisher. The Substance of Martyrs by William Sambrot, reprinted by permission of the author. Copyright 1963 by William Sambrot. And that is going to do it for this book. Anyways, if you enjoyed this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me anyway, all the information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.